But if you fall in love with a franchise and part of your motivation is the legacy, you have to be okay with the fact that they may not want to take it over. Because if all your motivation hinges on them wanting to take it over, it's a risky proposition, right?
Hello, and welcome to the Perfect Franchise Podcast.
I'm Kris, and joining me is my wonderful co-host, Andrea.
In this podcast, we're on a mission to help you discover all that franchising has to offer.
We'll explore expert strategies, interview successful franchise owners, and give you the tools to make informed decisions.
So whether you're considering your options or you're ready to take that plunge, we're here to support you every step of the way.
So let's jump into today's episode.
Welcome to another episode of the TPF podcast. Today, in our line of our expert series here at TPF, we have a couple of fellow consultants. But before I introduce them, Andrea, I wanted to ask you something because taking a look at the topics we're going to talk about today, they're all family oriented, the family dynamics that go into franchising.
They are.
Were you intentional about, are you that smart that you got these two as the guests?
That is specifically why I picked these topics. So
well, look at you.
Really, hone in on the relationship piece of this, because we deal with clients that have a lot of relationships, whether it's spouses, kids, there's lots going on. So we were specific on this one.
In franchising, as in business, family mixing with that can be tricky. So we have two stellar examples of when that can be successful. So today we have Mike Chiodo and his son, Michael Chiodo. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, starting us out, obviously Mike was doing so well in this business and Michael wanted to, emulate your dad, right? And come in and be like him. So that's great, Mike, that you have him doing this, and hopefully he's loving it so far like you do. So let's kind of start out, guys. And Mike, because you're the senior, I'm going to start out with you. And so going through, we talked a little bit about the theme is going to be families. And so one of the things we always hear is, I maybe want this to be a legacy for my kids. And so when that client says, I want to build something that maybe my kids can inherit, I don't want them to feel sort of trapped in this, but I want this option where they can then move into the business if they want to at some point and really build that legacy for them. How do you sort of help people through that?
Well, I think the first step that I do with a folk like that is let's explore where they're at. Are we talking about 2 and 3 year olds? Are we talking about college kids? Are they already out working? And how close are they to retiring and wanting to turn that legacy over? So that timing dynamic plays a role, because it may be appropriate up front making the decision about what business to have the kids involved in that. There's a lot of disconnect when you've got one person wanting something and somebody wanting another. So they might think, well, I want to do something because my child had some interest in this, but the child doesn't want to run that business after they're gone. And so you have to really make sure that is connected.
Yeah, that's a really good point. What do you have to add, Michael, to that?
Yeah, so jumping on to that, more about their vision. Again, it does kind of play a role on how old are the children, where are they going to be involved. But let's say they're younger. If you're going to have one location and you're kind of running the business day in and day out, and then you turn that over, well, then they've got to be in the business running it day in and day out. If you scale a franchise to 3, 5, 10 units, then you've got layers of management where that person's not involved in the day-to-day. They're just high-level overseeing. So that might be an easier thing to pass along. And then also something that you can talk with them about is the exit strategy. Maybe they're looking at it as the legacy might not be turning the business owner over. It might just be selling the business and then splitting it up amongst the kids. Yeah. So that's a potential option as well.
Yeah.
I think that's important, Michael. What I would tell my clients is we can go down that path, but if you fall in love with a franchise and part of your motivation is the legacy, you have to be okay with the fact that they may not want to take it over. And let's pretend they don't want to take it over. Would you still do this? Because if all your motivation hinges on them wanting to take it over, it's a risky proposition, right? But to your point, if you're okay with that, if you're like, if they don't want to take it over, I'll just sell it or keep it, right? Then we're fine. I think there's something else attached to this idea of legacy. So we're kind of talking in terms of I built a business and now someday my kids can take it over and run it and I'm out. But, there's also clients that want their kids to be involved working the business when they're younger. So I can have a business. This would be great for my kid to come home from high school when he's 15 and work in my franchise or, my multiple locations of franchises. That's a real thing too. And so, would you treat that any differently?
Yeah, I mean, there's not many businesses that, I mean, if it's more of a retail concept, I could see, a teenage kid going in and they're making smoothies, they're making something like that. Like that's something where they could definitely be involved if they're trying to teach them sort of the value of owning a business early on. So you can see that, but some of these other businesses are going to be a little bit more challenging at that age. And so I agree with you. It depends on where they're trying to get to. So if, anyone who's heard my story, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. I stupidly didn't take over the family business. And I went to pharmacy school, went to 9 years of college by the end and said, I still want to be a business owner. So that's obviously where I got into franchising. And so I didn't take that path at that time. So not every kid is going to take that when they're in college. They're just not thinking, depending on what it is. And I think it's really important for them as the owner to find the fit for the parent, right? Like that's where you need to fit and less about the skills of the child, because the reality is that the parent is the person that's going to grow and scale it. They're going to take the harder road. Building the business from the beginning, those first couple of years, that's the hardest path. They may get it to a point where it's much easier and their kids' skills come in and they fit into it, but they're taking that early sort of more challenging piece. And so it's more important to find their skill set and make sure the business is geared towards that.
I agree. So let's flip this around because we've been talking about the parent who wants a business and maybe they can leave to their child. We'll start with you this time, Michael. What do you do when you're talking to somebody who wants a business, a younger person who wants a business? They're working with you, but the money's coming from dad and mom. So dad and mom want to, they're willing to fund it, but, as part of that deal, dad and mom have a lot to say about a lot of things, right? So in essence, it's not that different than when we, help folks that are going into partnerships or who have investors. But how do you make sure that your client is getting into a good situation and, things aren't going to bite them after the fact, after they've already jumped in?
Yeah. Well, my dad and I can relate to this. We've partnered in a couple of businesses. I've worked for him. Same with you, Andrea. He owned Domino's stores when I was growing up, so I was working in those stores when I was about 10. And so we've had a lot of these conversations. Some businesses we didn't go into, but it's really having first off, if I'm talking to them, both need to be involved in the process. There needs to be kind of clear, defined roles. If the parent and I worked with a father-son duo not too long ago where really the dad was just like, I just want to be the money. I want to keep doing what I'm doing. He's, in his mid upper 20s. He's done some entrepreneurial things on his own. He's built up. I know he's a hard worker. I trust him. So for them, it was completely separate, just kind of like silent investor, but he wanted to help his kids kind of start building a legacy for himself. And so that was their scenario. In others, if the parent wants to be involved, then we need to have clear cut. If the son or father, daughter, son's the operator, that needs to be clear. The parent can't come in and then talk to the employees and give a different pathway. So clear expectations, and then also really separating the business from the family side of things, which might be the most difficult thing to do because we just act differently. We might answer the phone differently when our parents call compared to when it's a coworker or a friend.
Hear that, Mike?
Yeah, I've lived that, by the way.
Mike, what do you have to add to that?
That was good stuff, Michael. Great job. I think that you have to be careful if the parent is not going to be involved in the process. There can't be a scenario where a son says, Dad's going to pay for it. Let's get busy. At minimum, for me, I want to hear from that parent. I want to look them in the eyes and say, are you good? This is what we're going to go through. This is what we're dealing. We need to set up these checkpoints so that you're still on board. Because I've seen it way too many times where the parent comes in and then says, no, I don't like that business. Well, now the son or daughter has gone down 2 or 3 months sometimes with the brand and ready to go meet them and sign, and a parent comes in there. So there can't be that kind of dynamic. They really have to be from the beginning, like Michael pointed out, together on it. And then it can work. It's a great scenario. And I'm sure Michael would like me to buy him a franchise. It's a great scenario, but it has to be done right. That's all.
Yeah, I think that's important. So let's kind of dig a little bit deeper. Let's say, the child isn't going to be involved in the upfront, but they are going to be the operator of the business. So the parent's going to buy it. So, they want maybe their son or daughter to run it. What are sort of those, red flags and those green flags that you're helping them through the process of evaluating? Does this seem like the right business? If that's what you're doing and that person's 100% your operator, how do you help them through that? Figure out what potentially could be that best business if they're leaning on their child?
I think the child then becomes almost as if it's an individual making a decision about a franchise. Because the worst case scenario for them is to get into the business and have the child not really enjoy it. Now they've got a family dynamic, they've got a money dynamic, they've got a franchisor dynamic. So that child has to be involved, which means being on all the calls with the franchisor and with me. If they don't make that commitment and they're not enthusiastic and excited on their own, separate from their parents' excitement, that's a huge red flag and probably is going to be a big issue.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you have to add to that, Michael?
Yeah, great point, Dad. It really comes down to the components of, every franchise is going to have their action plan of what do you need to do to build and grow the business. And some might be more, hunter sales focused. Some might be more team building, project management. And so going to my dad's point, you need to have whoever the operator is, that needs to match their skill set. They need to be excited to get out of bed in the morning and go do what they're going to do. If you're not a salesperson and you got a sales gig, that's not exciting. You're probably not going to do well in it. The fit's not going to be good, and you're just more susceptible to failure. Even if the parent, it fits really well for the parent, if they're not going to be involved, it really needs to tailor, like my dad said, to the operator.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. The parent is the franchisee, but as you match them, you're matching the franchise to the son or daughter, right? Because they're the one that's in the day-to-day. And yeah, if what matches the parent doesn't match the child, and you can't find any common ground, I don't think you can go into business like that, right? So, yeah, I think there's a common theme here where it's all about dealing with all these possibly uncomfortable topics up front before there's any regret, before there's any buyer's remorse, right? Just putting it all out on the table. What if this happens? What if that happens? But you're right. To your point, Michael, I've had clients exactly like that, where the dad, 55 years old, sales veteran, could sell anything to anybody, and he wants to put his 25-year-old son, who's not a good salesman, right? What the dad likes in businesses, the son's not going to succeed, right? And you got to be able to not only identify that, but tactfully and gently broach that, right? Without hurting anybody's feelings or causing any familiar conflicts, which is never fun, right? But it's better now than after.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's who's operating the business day to day. And I think we've gone through 3 scenarios now. And one sort of, the parent is the person that's running it from the beginning and hoping to pass it down. One where the kid says, my parents just funding it, but I'm the main person. So they're the decision maker. Now it's kind of, I'm not only funding it, I'm going to oversee, and you're going to be my GM. That's very different. That GM, that person that's doing the day-to-day, has to have the right skill sets. And so it's really important to focus on them. So I totally agree with that. So those are good scenarios. So let's do one more. I think we have one more. And this is one where probably a little bit less about the relationship between the parent and the child, but there's generational differences, right? My parents' generation is very different than how I function and different than some of these younger generations. And so let's say you have that younger child that's, client that says, hey, you know what? I want to leave corporate. I want sort of that freedom that comes with this, but I need to make money fast. Like I need it right away. How do you sort of help them through that? Give them sort of, a little bit of unreasonable expectations there. So how are you encouraging them to be an entrepreneur, but at the same time, sort of level setting on that? Who wants to start? Mike, you want to start on that one?
I'll jump in. Yeah. So defining what freedom means.
Yeah.
And you want to leave corporate because of why? What is it? And what is it that you think you're going to get out of the business? And what is fast and how much is fast? And what do you have to sustain yourself in the meantime? The idea of going and making it happen and wanting to build quickly, I love it all. At the same time, if the expectations aren't realistic, then there's going to be a conflict at some point, either with their searching or when they get into a franchise, whatever. And so I think when I'm working with somebody, I feel a responsibility to kind of reality check.
It reminds me, I know we're getting close to the end here, but it reminds me of just the general idea that I tell people, when you work with me, when you work with any of us, we don't have all the answers, but what we do have is the process, right? We have the questions to ask and the process that could put some guardrails on what you're doing to really save you from a lot of mistakes. And what we've been talking about today are those things, right? Everybody's familiar dynamic is different. I don't know what the right answers are for your family, but I know the questions to ask, and I know the things that have to be dealt with before you sign on the dotted line and you're committed. And right, so
great point.
Yep. Well, thank you.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for coming on today. This was fun getting the father-son duo on. So I'm glad we kind of got to talk about some of these harder questions. And when you guys have been in business a couple times together, you've been in a lot of different scenarios and different points throughout your lives. So we really appreciate you both coming on today. Thank you so much for that. And
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And if you're thinking about franchising, remember that while there's no one size fits all, there's a perfect franchise out there for you. To explore your options, visit theperfectfranchise.com and click on Let's Talk to schedule a call with a consultant on the Perfect Franchise team. We look forward to connecting with you again on our next episode.